Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson, and on today's show we've got plenty to focus on with some of the biggest meetings in Europe coming our way over the next week. Of course, we've got the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes at Ascot this week, and then we roll into next week with Glorious Goodwood and of course the Galway Festival. Let's welcome in the team to discuss all things racing. Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley join me. Stephen, welcome back. You look nice and refreshed after a break overseas, but while you're away there certainly was plenty of action happening on the track with some great racing, particularly in Ireland and the UK.
Yeah, it's been great to be away. Nice to have a well-deserved break, Shane. As you know, when you work as hard as me, you really do need a proper break every now and then. Yeah, it's great racing. I mean, one of the things when you do go on holiday these days, you still watch all the racing. You know, you're on your phone on the beach watching Twitter and then watching all the apps to see where your money went. But hopefully we've stayed in touch. It's a brilliant weekend this weekend, though. Top class flat racing.
Well, I'll mention it a bit later, but I'll give you a big pat on the back. You've come back from your little holiday and you've been in red-hot form, tipping winners all over the place this week. So I'm looking forward to getting some further betting insight from you throughout the show. Ed Quigley's with us as well. Ed, always great to catch up. And I thought we had some tremendous racing last weekend. I know we'll talk about the Irish Oaks in particular in a bit more detail. But all of a sudden, there seems to be a fair bit of depth in this three-year-old division that I, in particular, and I think a few others, didn't really think was going to be there at the start of the season.
Yeah, indeed. We were discussing it, weren't we? It's funny how it just suddenly springs to life. But the old middle distance division, it really does like an absolute belter, doesn't it? Which essentially is all roads lead into the Arc. And it seems to be the conversation everyone keeps having. You know, if A, B, C and D, if they could all line up in France in October. I mean, at the moment, there's some really, really high-class sorts, all rated 120 plus. You hope they all keep their legs in one piece because, as I said, that mile and a quarter to a mile and a half kind of sector at the moment looks absolutely stacked.
All right, guys, let's get into some of the juicy news of the week. And we do have a big story that is rather negative, and it certainly is impacting racing, particularly in the UK and Ireland. And that is from the publication of a show called The Dark Side of Horse Racing, which was broadcast on the Panorama program on Monday night. And, well, of course, Panorama is one of the most viewed programs there is in all of the UK, Stephen. The story is quite negative. It puts a spotlight on horse racing. It puts a spotlight on animal and equine welfare in particular. And basically, it looks like some of the significant rules that are in place for equine welfare, particularly rules around the slaughter of horses, have been breached. Now, I know that the British Horse Racing Authority and also Horse Racing Ireland have come together and they're having some urgent meetings throughout the week to get to the bottom of it all. But the reality is horse racing, and particularly the social licence attached to equine welfare, is right in the firing line once again.
Yeah, this was a really sad programme. I mean, I don't think you can dismiss it, Shane. I mean, instinctively, whenever I hear sort of animal aid involved in it, their agenda is to get rid of horse racing. Let's make no bones about it. They think it's cruel. Now, those of us who earn a living from the sport will vigorously defend it. So we need to get things right. And obviously, this was completely unacceptable that a horse, I think it was Vita de Rock, wasn't it, who used to be with Nicky Henderson, ended up with Gordon Elliott, ended up at this slaughterhouse. That seemed to be what they'd framed the programme around. It's hard to know the scale of actual racehorses who are being sent for slaughter rather than bad practice at a slaughterhouse for all horses, which is a totally different subject altogether, whether they're lame or unable or unsuitable to be retired properly. But I think what we're going to have to do in racing is agree a point at the point of ownership that you need to prepare for life after racing for the horse that you own in some form or another. That's going to probably be in the form of some kind of tax or a levy that's placed on training fees or something like that to ensure. We've had this in dog racing, Shane, by the way, a huge scandal, very similar, that some trainers a few years ago were caught disposing of greyhounds when they'd finished racing in an inhumane way. And the powers that be have actually sorted this now. There's been several £1 million gone into greyhound ownership, and there's some fantastic organisations. So while the problem's still there, it's much, much smaller and now under control. And horse racing has probably got to do exactly the same.
Which I certainly agree with. I know that from an Australian perspective, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was a similar program, the Four Corners program, that did an expose around equine welfare issues and also how animals are treated, particularly if there's no further use for them through injury or other on the racecourse. And a similar scenario, similar fallout occurred. the fact is, Ed, the industry has to be at the forefront because there are probably four main pillars when it comes to the racing game. You've got integrity, you've got programming, so the structure of the sport, you've got wagering, and of course you've got welfare. If one or two of those pillars are breached, the sport's in a lot of trouble, and it certainly looks like that's the case here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll agree with a lot of what Stephen said there. And often when we talk about welfare, I often think we're getting making mountains out of molehills about whip rules and all sorts of little issues, which I think are personally a bit trivial. This, you cannot dismiss, was just totally abhorrent. And there are clearly massive chinks and breakdowns in what should be happening or what people believe to be happening once the horse has left their ownership. And there's a word you floated around, Shane, which I think is really important: traceability. That seems to be the point. There needs to be a from the start, as Stephen said, to the finish of the horse's life. The horse needs to be tracked, essentially, what's going on. There seems to be this overriding view. You hear it amongst some owners and some traders and jockeys. I've often said to them, "Oh, what's horse so and so up to these days?" And it's as if they've just disappeared into space with Jeff Bezos. So there needs to be some much more of a traceability and accountability, specifically on the Panorama show. Yes, it did highlight an issue which does need to be looked at clearly. However, the show as a whole, I made it about 95% of the horses involved with the abattoir were not thoroughbred. So the show as a whole was attacked. Framed as an attack on the horse racing industry. Well, yes, there are clearly problems with the horse racing industry. I think it slightly misled viewers. But again, alluding back to Stephen's point, it's how much of a widespread issue this is. Is this just a little can of worms, or are there literally half a dozen issues of it? And, once that gets cleaned up, it gets knocked on the head. Coming back again to Stephen's point, something will have to be done now. I mean, we seem to be going on about week after week how there seem to be long lunches and 15-month debates about a lot of things. Nothing gets done. I think this has sent home a lot of alarm bells, and I think a lot will be done and quickly on this. And as I said, traceability is a good word you've used, Shane. From start to finish, we need to know what's happening. And as soon as that gets cleaned up, then, the welfare complainants have literally nowhere to go in that point.
Stephen, you touched on earlier the greyhound racing experience, and I think regardless of whether it's greyhound racing or horse racing, whether it be thoroughbreds or whether it be the standardbreds used for harness racing or trotting, there is a shift, there is a cultural shift going on globally, and that is about the use of animals in sport. So I think the generations coming through, and particularly the younger generations of 23 and under, which I think they're now known as Generation Z and Generation Millennium, which are all coming through, their mindset is going to be vastly different than perhaps my generation, your generation, those of us, those who are older than us, where there is a perception that should you be using animals for a sporting activity or an entertainment activity? And unless the industry can stay right at the front of affairs here and really make sure that they're doing everything possible, in 20, 30, 40 years, we may not have racing codes, particularly to the levels that we've got now, because that culture shift will be far greater than what perhaps people were prepared for and did enough to try and stay ahead of.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly right, Shane. I mean, those of us who are a bit older have got to take the time to explain things of why these sports are valuable and give a fantastic life to either dogs or horses who wouldn't have a life otherwise. You're simply not going to be breeding hundreds of thousands of dogs and horses every year on year. They're not going to have a life at all, and they're wonderfully looked after. I mean, I've visited kennels near me where I've had a dog in training and stuff. The dogs are looked after far better than the people who are looking after them. In actual truth, that they're in immaculate, spotless condition. They're kept in immaculate condition, and that's certainly true of the 2 or 3 horse racing stables I've visited. I mean, Dan Skelton, for instance, his operation, every single horse is looked after. If there's any kind of niggle, they're immediately seen by the vet, and they are looked after afterwards. They're found homes where it's possible to. So there is a lot of good going on. We can't let it all get tarnished. But what you've said about the younger generation is right, Shane. I mean, I play football with a few young lads, and 2 or 3 of them think that it's cruel. Well, my temptation is, don't be so stupid, but you've actually got to sit back and explain to them why it's not cruel, why they're fantastically looked after and enjoy the sport that they're taking part in. I mean, if you go to a dog racing kennels, for instance, they can't wait to go racing. They're going absolutely bananas to get there. If you go jump racing, you'll see horses that might lose their jockey early on. They'll jump round themselves because it's adrenaline, it's exercise, it's what they've been bred to do. So it's extremely complicated We've got to get things right at the end of their lives, undoubtedly, and perhaps that is slightly going wrong at the moment. But it's still a brilliant sport, and we need to stand up for it.
Yeah, I agree with all you've just said there. At one point, though, that does need to be factored in here is that we do see some of these authorities, whether it be the BHA or Horse Racing Ireland or some of the others around the world, they do their best. They put in rules and regulations. People who breach those rules and regulations can often be suspended or disqualified and so on. But there still seems to be a broader perception by participants in the sport that they'll reach out and they'll bring some of these people who have broken the rules, that have done the wrong thing, and bring them back into the fold. Until that mindset changes, we've got a lot of problems. And I know we've had certain cases where people who have been banned or disqualified have been still actively involved in horse stables.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the issue that surfaced recently is the Stephen Mahon case, of course. He was banned for 4 years, wasn't he, for neglect and essentially a breach of welfare for his horses. It appears he somehow signed off and been authorised to be the travelling head lad for the Pat Kelly stable. And then there's another news article broken this week, according to the Racing Post, of he's there. He's got in when the vets have gone in to take a post-race sample of one of the horses. He's gone in there and, in inverted commas, tried to intimidate the vet who's trying to take the sample. But yeah, exactly. I mean, to me, it's a bit bewildering how he's got authorised to even kind of step foot on the premises again. It is a little bit bizarre, but yeah, exactly. There just seems to be loophole after loophole, and I'm all one for trying to not be all draconian, but there's sometimes a couple of athletic nightclub bouncers like yourself, Shane, just put them on the door and let's put our foot down a minute, because there just seems to be just story after story of just these little, as I say, people just loopholes in instances like this. And I mean, who's authorised him to be on the premises? I mean, I suppose from one argument, he's been banned from training, I suppose. And I suppose I haven't read the whole case in its entirety. I suppose there's a technical element to it to suggest that if he is a travelling head lad, he's therefore not training. So that's probably how he's got round it in order of getting there. But I don't know. I just find it all bizarre the whole time. As I said, there seems to be so much talk. And in the end, we seem to have some kind of moderate middle ground in a lot of instances, which no one really ends up going happy with. And sometimes I do think like the foot needs to be put down. And going back to your original point, in regards to what the Panorama show has, yes, the chances are a lot of it, some of it could have been overblown and wasn't specifically to the thoroughbred and horse racing industry, but you cannot deny there is an issue there and it needs to be tapped into and sorted, no matter how small it is, because yeah, there's no defending what were pretty abhorrent scenes in that specific case.
All right, Ed, I'm going to use my imposing nightclub bouncer approach to things as we shift now to a more positive discussion point, and that is the Irish Oaks last weekend. I thought we had some great racing at the Curragh. But, Stephen, with the Irish Oaks going the way of Snowfall, she's now won the Oaks at Epsom by 16 lengths. She's now won the Irish Oaks by the best part, I think it was 8.5 lengths or 8.25 lengths. Is she a legitimate superstar, or is she just beating some absolute average types in the fillies brigade in that 1.5 mile, that staying division? How do you assess her?
Well, I know, Shane, you're not a fan, and I'm inclined to agree with you, unusually, to be honest. My notes are York, gifted run of the race, tactical affair, everything else pulled very hard, probably flattered. So I was completely wrong. She won the Oaks by 16 lengths, but I mean, soft ground, rapid early pace, came stand side, everything else stopped, form's not worked out. In Ireland last weekend, it was a meeting of stablemates, most of whom are extremely disappointing, and she slaughtered them again. I mean, she wasn't going to get any trouble in running in that race, was she? She was 7-2 on, and the Red Sea parted, and she completely outclassed them. So what's she actually beaten? I mean, I think she's amazingly improved from 2-3, because she was pretty exposed at 2. And don't forget, when she started off at York, she started at 14-1, Shane. Well, Aidan O'Brien does not have 14-1 winners. It's against the rules of racing, to be honest. I should think Connections were absolutely mortified that she'd won at 14-1. That being said, she's obviously improved. She's thrashed everything she's seen this summer. I suspect, like you, that when she's in a proper race, like the Arc, for instance, wherever she goes next, she's going to be wildly, wildly underpriced on form. And we'll all have to be obliged to be against her.
Yeah, the thing I'm really struggling to come to terms with is that, last year Aidan had an outstanding filly in Love who won 1,000 guineas, went on to win the Oaks by a massive space, went on to win the Yorkshire Oaks, and she's now come back this season and won a legitimate Group 1 in the Prince of Wales Stakes at Royal Ascot. I mean, Can he get another superstar in such a short period of time? Possibly. But Ed, when you have a look at the form around Snowfall, in the Irish Oaks, the best form around her is the runner-up had won a Group 3 on heavy ground as a 2-year-old, as her best performance. The third place getter had a listed win next to her name. I mean, these aren't horses that are really, truly, deeply exposed that they could be proven Group 1 types. The form's just not saying that at the moment, despite the fact her winning by big spaces, running what is considerably good time. She hasn't really been tested against the true A-graders.
No, she hasn't. I'd say that's correct. I mean, in answer to your very first point, has she been beaten rubbish or is she a superstar? There's a chance it could be a bit of both in the fact that she could be a superstar, just absolutely trouncing rubbish horses. And when she goes up and meets something better, she quickens up in the same manner. I mean, you cannot rule that out at the moment. I mean, there's no getting away from the fact she has won 2 Classics by an aggregate of 24 lengths, which, happens once every 50 years. So, look, again, the bigger point is the one Stephen touched upon here, is it becomes down to a question of price for an end of season target. Do you want to back her at 7-2 for the Arc, I suppose, is the question. I mean, she's clearly 120 80 plus filly. It's just, is she 121 or is she 128, if that makes sense? And at the top level, that's a massive difference, isn't it? I mean, that's the difference between 8th in the Arc and winning. So, 7-2, not for me, personally. I would at least like to see her in one more kind of crunch test beforehand, and then put it this way: I'd rather the price shorten and see her see off a solid Group 1 yardstick, if you see what I'm saying, beforehand, and then go in for Snowfall. But yeah, nonetheless, look, she's clearly brilliant, or at least very good, but tougher tests to wait, and I suppose price, as Stephen says, will dictate everything.
I'll tell you what, I think she's overrated, and I think I'm going to lay her consistently between now and the Arc. And if it goes my way, I'll be smiling. If not, I'll be tap dancing out the front of Longchamp, trying to get my fare back to Copenhagen. But she's very, very good. I'm not doubting that. But the reality is, I just cannot fathom her being a 7-2 favourite this far out from the Arc when you've got some other true, proven Group 1 performers in form and heading in that same direction. Anyway, it'll be a fascinating few months ahead. Stephen, I know you're back from holiday though. You've had a chance to look at some of the other horses that stepped out from the weekend gone. Are there any that have caught your eye that we should be following as we progress through the remainder of the summer months?
Well, I think there was one at Newbury, Shane, that I really did like, and that was called Real World in the Stevenson listed contest. This was a very strong run race on fast ground, and the runner-up got first run quick and clear. And it was an absolutely amazing performance to sort of quicken twice and win going away. The pair of them miles clear of the rest. Now, I think this one, it might well be in at Goodwood next week in a handicap, back into a handicap. And that really could be a dot on the card if that's the route they choose. Maybe the run might come a bit too soon and they'll avoid Goodwood, but definitely Real World is very much one to look out for.
That one really stinks you bringing that back up, because I was heavily committed to the runner-up in that race, and I was basically mentally spending the money when he hit the front a furlong from home, only to be gobbled up in 2 strides by a horse who I think is potentially a Group 1 performer in time. What about you, Ed? Anything coming from your direction over the weekend that we should be following?
That's quite funny because Stephen stole my thunder, because I've got a Real World underlined, and absolute no. I think this is a serious horse. Obviously won the Royal Hunt Cup off 94. I think handicaps are going to be out the window now. It's been given a lottery mark of 116 after this, so it's clearly on the verge of Group 1 level. They're thinking. Interested to listen to connections. They said they wanted to have another crack at 10 furlongs. They weren't quite sure. The horse was still pretty keen throughout the early stages, and but the horse did quicken up and win in a really good fashion, didn't he? Really interesting. I think they could easily come back to mile. I think that's probably the horse's trip, a strongly run mile, but has proven that the horse will get a mile and a quarter if needed. And it's also good for Cy Bin Saror, because all the talk's generally about Charlie Appleby when it comes to the boys in blue. But this was a nice fillip for that team. And obviously Marco Ghiani's jockeying do very little wrong at the moment. Really interesting where they go with this horse in terms of end of season targets. What the horse will need, though, is fast ground. I thought something like the QE2 would be absolutely perfect for him, but the chances are the ground could have absolutely gone to bits by then. So, but I could easily see a clash further down the line with something like St. Mark's Basilica over a mile or 10 furlongs. Definitely a horse with serious gears. Has improved 22 pounds in the space of 5 weeks. Official ratings suggest we need to improve about another 7 or 8 to be a serious Group 1 contender. And so, given the rate of improvement in the recent weeks, there's no saying that the improvement won't stop. So, yet to see the ceiling of this horse. I think Real World's a really exciting time.
All right, you're both heavily siding there with Real World. You talk about the miler division. Of course, the Sussex Stakes next week at Glorious Goodwood is always one of the great races on the calendar. But this year, unfortunately, we're losing one of the highlight horses. Palace Pier will not be contesting the race. Had a little setback, Stephen, a little blood issue, which won't impact his overall campaign, but of course robs the Sussex Stakes field of a genuine star. I mean, what does John Gosden do now with him? Do you put him on the sidelines and maybe one more run towards the end of the season? I know there's been some chatter he might be going for the Jacques Le Marois in France in a couple of weeks' time. What would you do if he was yours?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how bad the blood problem was. I mean, I wouldn't have thought he'd be looking to run at the Champions Day meeting at the end of the season, because the ground's usually soft there, and I know he's always been worried about soft ground, although he won well on it in the past. Yeah, he's a top class horse. He was unimpressive at Royal Ascot, wasn't he? But I think he just idles in front. He did just enough to land a very short price. I thought the one who's interesting in this stakes is Alcohol Free of Andrew Balding, who ran at Newmarket a couple of weeks ago behind Snow Lantern. If you watch that run back, Alcohol Free was far too free in the lead under D'Souza and got picked off very late, having looked the winner for most of the race. So I think Goodwood could be a really good track for Alcohol Free for a more patient ride. So I'm hoping that one turns up. It'll still be a top quality race. I see Poetic Flair of Bolges is out again, entered again to run at Goodwood. It'd be great to see that one turn up instead of the original favourite.
All right, we'll talk more about the Glorious Goodwood meeting soon. But Ed, also good to see this week the St Ledger entries came out. And from your perspective, I know that you were pushing for Hurricane Lane to go in that direction. He's still in the early markets. Well, he's been nominated for the race. He's an entry for the race where he's the current 9-4 market leader in antepost markets. Adayar, the other Derby winner, of course, from Epsom, who's set to run this weekend at Ascot's also there. We've got the likes of Alenquer, Lone Eagle, Wordsworth, Sir Lucan and Mojo Star. So a lot of those really high-class 3-year-olds, as you would be hoping for, have been entered for the St Ledger. But at least from your perspective, your Godolphin standout is still in the mix.
Yeah, the dream's not dead yet, Shane, although on the back of what he produced last time out, it sounds like they're thinking about the Arc. But that is the interesting angle. There is 22 days between the Ledger and the Arc here. I mean, is it impossible he could do both? I mean, if he went to the St Ledger as a even money poke and dots up, you know, there's enough of a buffer this year between the two races, if you see what I'm saying. That could they roll the dice in both? I don't know. I think you would absolutely waltz home in the at Townmoor. It has to be said, but I said connections may start to think maybe they'll run Adayar there and he's going to be the Arc horse. I don't know. Lots to think about in that sense. But just very quickly back on Palace Pier, connections have been mooting all season. At some point they're going to have a 10 furlong crack with him. I just wonder whether this has forced their hand a little bit now. I see he's got his entry in the Judmont International at York over 10 furlongs. Whether they may just go straight there and roll the dice. Because I think John Gosden wants to find out, is he a Group 1 10 furlong horse? Because that's going to then open up a whole new avenue of options, if you like. If he goes there and then falls in a hole, then he'll be back to mile contest for the end of the year. Because they're kind of running out of time if they do want to explore that avenue, if you see what I'm saying. So definitely interested. There's rumours of France over a mile, as you say. The rumours of 10 furlongs of the Judmont. So definitely a lot of head scratching in the John and Thady Gosden camp. But yeah, the St Ledger entries, they look exciting. And obviously my pockets wants Hurricane Lane to turn up and win on the Schnaff. But I get a feeling that horse, you looked, and we touched upon it last week's show, seems to be getting quicker with training, really thriving. And on the evidence you've seen, you'd be absolutely bonkers given the 3-year-old allowance to be swerving the Arc de Triomphe on that evidence so far.
All right, good point. It's now time to have a look at the upcoming races. One of the true summer showpiece events is coming up on Saturday, and that is at Ascot. It's the Group 1 King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes, and of course, only a small field. We were anticipating it to be a small field, but let's have a look at the runners, courtesy of IrishRacing.com. And a field of 6, where Aidan O'Brien's Broome is currently an outsider with Bet365 at 25-1. Mishriff, who looked in need of the run in the Eclipse Stakes last start when finishing third at 13-2, best price, David Egan, John Gosden. Love, the star filly of last season and the Group 1 winner of the Princes of Wales Stakes, is at 11-8. The favourite, Ryan Moore, probably takes the ride on her for Aidan O'Brien. The very much informed Wonderful Tonight, who's got some outstanding form lines working around her at the moment. She's at a big price, 14-1, Oisin Murphy for David Menuisier. Adayar, the Derby winner, Charlie Appleby and William Buick, currently at 2-1, suppressing love for favouritism. And Stephen's got a bit of a push for Lone Eagle. We'll talk about that soon. Frankie Dettori for Martin Mead, currently at 13-2, so a small field of 6. Stephen, a fascinating contest. I think tactics here are going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is a fascinating race, Shane. I mean, I think the weak link in the chain is probably Mishriff, 13-2. I couldn't back that with stolen money. I thought that was bitterly, bitterly disappointing last time out. Finished very weakly. Okay, needed the run, etc., but not for me at all. I think that would be a real surprise winner. I think that one is going to be a much bigger price by the time we get to the off. Of the front two, well, Love's had one run in a year, had lots of problems. Was she impressive at Royal Ascot? I didn't. Got the complete run of the race, dictated, had a hard race to see off some modest rivals. Now, she might well leave that form well behind, but I don't really want to back her at 11-8 to find out. And the Derby winner, Adayar, well, he was in the perfect spot up the inside throughout Epsom. He was one of the few who handled the conditions and the track. I suspect he's very flattered by a literal reading. So that's 5-4 and 7-4, and we don't fancy Mishriff at 7-1. I really do think that Lone Eagle is overpriced 13-2. My main hope is that Dettori gets a soft lead, which is quite possible. I mean, only really Broome could drive him mad, maybe if they decided to use that one as a pacemaker. I don't think they'll want to lead on Love again. So I can see Dettori setting unpestered fractions here. His run last time out against Hurricane Lane in Ireland is top-class form, proper form, that's been well franked by the runner-up. Ascot is a very, very good track for front-runners on that course, and Dettori is brilliant at Ascot, as everybody in the world knows. So 13-2, there's still a bit more improvement to come from Lone Eagle. Make all, fend them all off. Thank you very much.
Love it. Bit of confidence there from Stephen for a horse at a good price, 13-2 about for Lone Eagle, the 3-year-old. Ed, I'll be honest when it comes to this race. I'm a huge fan of quite a few runners here. I can't work it out which way to go. It might be a race that I end up not even having a bet in and just watch and say that was a fabulous contest. But to me, it looks a raffle. How have you assessed it?
Wow, it's interesting listening to Stephen's workings there. He's almost got me a bit nervous now. I have to say that. I think Love's going to actually smash this field to bits. Personally, look. The ground's going to be a key here. I mean, it's currently good to firm. It's 30-degree sun. I mean, the ground at Ascot's like the runway at Heathrow Airport at the moment. I mean, it's absolute. The only thing that's stopping me going a 10-point all-in job here on Love is, if you look at Saturday's weather, thunderstorms, heavy showers, boom. I mean, the odd heavy shower I'm not worried about, but if it actually started raining at 6 a.m. and chucked it down all day, that would throw a totally different complexion on the race, because I'm convinced Adayar wants soft ground. Wonderful Tonight's a wonderful filly. All her forms come on very deep ground. I agree with Stephen about Mishriff. Am I right thinking the horse burst a blood vessel with Maidan before running last time out? And I just wonder whether maybe the horse is feeling the effects of that. Adayar, again, I thought won a Derby where it handled conditions. Charlie Appleby said that the horse in an ideal world would have soft ground. So this is if the weather holds up, you're looking at a pretty rattling surface. I just think Love, they would just chuff to get her back on the pitch, if you like, after 10 months off. Yes, in the strictest form sense, it wasn't all that impressive. I think she'll come on the bundle for that. I think the step back up to 1.5 miles will really suit her. I think she'll tighten up from that run. She's got winning form at the track at Group 1 level, etc., etc. I just think, again, no kind of fancy price you should expect, but she's a bit of a superstar. I mean, the one point we should always touch upon is the kind of 3-year-old allowance. Obviously slightly different because she's a filly, so it starts getting complicated, doesn't it, between Love and Adayar. But essentially, if the ground was soft with the 3-year-old weight for age, and I do think Adayar would be, should be favourite essentially. But if the ground is as quick as forecast, I said we're recording this 2 days in advance, which is the only reason why I'm slightly fence-sitting in that sense. Of I think Love will win this convincingly, personally, if the ground rides as quick as the weather predicts, shall we say.
I like a bit of confidence from both of you. So when you talk about Love, I mean, her 2 goes at 1.5 miles. She's won an Oaks by 9 lengths. She's won a Yorkshire Oaks by 5 lengths. She's come back and beaten the established older horses. Great form. So she's currently best priced at around 5-2. And as Stephen gave his strong push for Lone Eagle, best price at around that 13-2, possibly 7-1 at the moment. So regardless, I think if you want to follow the advice of our 2 wonderful experts here, you're going to be in with a great run for your money. Let's go to the next race that we want to focus on with a bit more detail. And this is a really good meeting up at York, one of my favourite racecourses anywhere in the world, the big flat track, and we've got the running of the Group 2 Sky Bet York Stakes. Now this is over 10 furlongs, and as we have a look courtesy of irishracing.com, again a relatively small field. Armory 2-1 is one of the favourites here for Aidan O'Brien. Bangkok's at 16-1, Ebury's at 3-1, Juan Elcano's at 12-1. Montatham is currently I think those markets might be a bit wrong there, so we might just disregard those markets. Apologies there, but Montatham and Mohaafeth, I'll get that out, the 3-year-old son of Frankel, are certainly in the field there. So I'll just try and get a bit of an update market coming through. We just got a slight graphical issue there. So we've only got the field of 5 that are facing the starter, I think now confirmed. So Mohaafeth is currently best price about 6-5. Armory's best price at around 15-8. And Juan Elcano's next best at 7-2. All right, Stephen, what are you doing in the Sky Bet York Stakes? You have a fancy here for a really good contest over the 1.25 miles.
Yeah, fascinating race. I think Armory is probably flattered by that Love form at Ascot, and I'm not convinced it was very good form anyway. I do think the Mohaafeth is the one to side with. We'll love the fast ground. We'll love York. If you watch back the win in the Hampton Court at Royal Ascot when backed off the boards, I thought it was one of those races where the winning ride was an extremely poor one, and the horse was a lot better than the bare result. Crowley came via the car park, making up rapid headway and sustained the run to see it out. I thought it was a pretty remarkable performance, to be honest, for all that the form is only modest for that particular race. And I think Mohaafeth has everything in its favour. I suspect this will be one of those fascinating races. What the heavy mob do with Armory in the betting will depend on whether Mohaafeth starts 5-4 on or 7-4 against, and I suspect it'll be nearer 5-4 on. So I wouldn't be surprised if the top one is not held in all that much regard. Wasn't particularly impressive at Chester in a tactical little race, and was very flattered behind a workmanlike Love at Ascot. So I'm a clear Mohaafeth supporter.
Okay, Mohaafeth there from Stephen. What are you doing, Ed?
Yeah, I've been with Mohaafeth. I mean, again, William Haggis always said the ground is key to this individual. Should have absolutely rattling ground, a strong traveller, as Stephen touched on. Perhaps could have won by a bit more at Ascot. And again, you've got the weight for age, and you've got Armory under a Group 2 penalty. So I mean, it's £12 Armory's got to concede Mohaafeth. He's only officially a £7 better horse. So it's again, £12 is a lot. I'll talk about it all season. We saw this at St Mark's Basilica. I do think personally it's a little bit crackers the amount of weight these top class 3-year-olds do get from their elders. But anyway, that's the way it is. And I just think Mohaafeth, with getting £12 with ground to suit, should just be too good.
All right, Mohaafeth there from Ed. I'm actually in the Armory camp. I know that he's giving away a fair bit of weight, but I think he's been competitive in some of the strongest races there's been on the calendar for the last 12 months, while Mohaafeth has been bullying the younger horses. This will be a tougher test for him, so I'm happy to side with Armory. We'll talk more about that in the tips of the week coming up very soon. But guys, we've also got some wonderful racing coming up over the next week, and of course, when we do jump to it next week, we'll talk a bit more detail about some of the major events, and of course, it's Glorious Goodwood and the Galway Festival. Let's focus on some of the bigger races, and at Glorious Goodwood, the first of the major ones is the Al Shakir Goodwood Cup. Group 1 over 2 miles, 3,200 metres, and Stradivarius is attempting to win this race for the 5th consecutive year. He's currently a 13-8 favourite with 888. Spanish Mission, I should say, is 6-1 also with 888 best price. Trushan is at 6-1 best price with William Hill. Saron Priestley has been in good form for Mark Johnson, 7-1 with Bet365, and Santiago is the other one in the market, 12-1 with William Hill. As we have a look at that Goodwood Cup, Stephen, are you happy to side with Stradivarius, or are you going wider and trying to find something to end his reign at Goodwood?
Well, I suspect this might be another race might cut up, Shane. That 13-8 would probably be quite a big price, I'd imagine, Stradivarius. I'd be surprised if that was still available on the day. I mean, okay, he's getting on a bit. He was well beaten at Royal Ascot, but he did get a pretty dismal ride and no luck in running at Royal Ascot, and Goodwood is his track. He absolutely loves Goodwood on fast ground. It's made for him. He can just be covered up and quick and clear late. If he's still the force of old, that's going to be a very fair price odds against some more exposed stayers. Obviously, we're missing Service, which is a real who would have been one of the matches of the week in this race. But I think the way now is left clear to Stradivarius.
What's your thoughts, Ed?
It looks Stradivarius' race to lose on paper. As Stephen says, subjectivist not there now has really opened the door. I mean, I'm going to be crying here. My old friend Santiago, I had to beat Stradivarius at Ascot as he's in the lineup. And funny enough, ran his best, was only beaten, a couple of lengths by Stradivarius at Goodwood when they met last year. So perhaps that track will play to Santiago's strengths. But again, it's like all horses. At some point, they just go over the hill and get too old. We discussed this, didn't we, in regards to Stradivarius at Ascot. There perhaps wasn't enough kind of empirical evidence to make that judgment yet. But this looks a slightly below par renewal. He's still got the class act. He's the most likely winner. Odds against would be fair, but I will be interested who's going to turn up. A lot of connections seem a little bit non-committal as to who's actually going to be going here at the moment. So interested when I see Trushan's in there. Of course, he swerved Royal Ascot at the 11th hour because the ground went to absolute pot. Has run okay since in a decent price on the all-weather. I've always thought he's perhaps a Group 1.5 horse. So it's hard, really. I think at some point he's getting old, Stradivarius, but what's going to actually take him on and beat him, I don't really know. It could just be a case of when he goes, he just tails off with the ambulance and you can throw a blanket over the rest of them. So, keeping my eyes on that contest for now without any firm opinion.
Fair point. Possibly Sir Ron Priestley from me, up on speed, maybe being hard to run down, could be the way to go at around that 7 to 8 to 1 mark. Let's have a look at the next of the Group 1 races, and that is on the Wednesday of Glorious Goodwood, and this is the Qatar Sussex Stakes over a mile. And Poetic Flair, the outstanding 3-year-old, is the market leader. You're getting 11 to 8 on Bet365. Order of Australia, who won over 7 furlongs last weekend, is currently 13 to 2 with William Hill. The filly Alcohol Free, who Stephen mentioned earlier, 13 to 2 with William Hill as well. Lope Fernandez at 10 to 1, also with William Hill. And Tilsit, Group 2 winner last time out at 11 to 2 with Bet365. It's 14 to 1 or bigger, the remainder of the field. Stephen, Poetic Flair, an outstanding 3-year-old. He's a classic winner. He's a star. But as you made a case for a little bit earlier, there might be a bit of value further in the field if you don't want to side with the favourite.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a good race to play each way in now, Shane, because, I mean, there must be a chance the favourite doesn't turn up, although Palace Pier missing probably makes Jim Bolger's mind up for him. Alcohol Free, I thought, is really progressive, held in the highest regard by Balding, who's got some terrific horses to measure her against. And she was stable nap at Newmarket. They were all on. She pulled too hard for the first couple of furlongs and was there to be shot at against the far rail and just wilted late in what was a very good race. Perhaps she'll be ridden with a bit more patience. I think Oisin Murphy's already booked for her. She'd be a good each way bet. And if the race cut up, if you're getting 13 to 2 each way now, 3 places, you end up with 5 runners. You're going to get a fantastic bet. I believe she's a definite runner, so perhaps there's worse things to do than back her now.
Ed, are you with the favourite, or do you think there could be a bit of an upset?
I think the favourite, most likely winner. The interesting one I did think was Tilsit, who a lot of people have got to remember, it's kind of almost come on the scene a bit late. Didn't have a 2-year-old campaign. Only made it to the race course as a 3-year-old. Is a bit of a late bloomer, and I was actually quite impressed with that performance in the summer mile. Doesn't have many miles on the clock. Probably needs to improve, about another £7 or £8 and be getting involved here. But it's a double-figure price, and I can't imagine we've seen the ceiling of that one's ability yet. So, Poetic Flair, most likely winner, priced accordingly at around the 4 to 5 mark. But Tilsit, I'd be surprised if Tilsit started double figures, shall we say, looking at the progressive nature of this horse, who's, as I said, a very, very lightly raced, no miles on the clock, and won in good style last time out.
Third of the Group 1s for Glorious Goodwood is the Nassau Stakes, sponsored by Qatar. This is over 1.25 miles, and we have Adayar is the favourite, 11 to 4, Bet365. Snow Lantern, last start winner of the Falmouth at 9 to 2 for William Hill. Joan of Arc, another top class 3-year-old filly at 5 to 1 with Bet365. Love's still in the mix because she does hold a nomination for the race, but she is going to run in the Group 1 this weekend, so unlikely to see her there at 5 to 1. And of course, Snowfall, the Group 1 winner of the Oaks and also Irish Oaks. She's also in the market there at 6 to 1, but unlikely to take her place, but still in the nominations. From the early markets, what are you thinking of doing here, Stephen?
Well, I like Snow Lantern. I think it was a really good run at Newmarket. made up all the ground up the middle of the track away from the heat of the race and saw out the run remarkably well. It was a brilliant race, but brilliant spectacle. Clearly thriving at the minute, loves fast ground, likely to run. I mean, looking at that list, Shane, I think probably 3 of them are unlikely to run. So at this stage, I'd be with Snow Lantern.
All right, Ed, any firm view on the Nassau?
Absolutely, yeah. Snow Lantern, I think it's a big price, potentially, 9-2. Adayar, almost hypocritically, I think was a little bit flattered to get as close to Love as she did, just given that I think it was just a case of getting Love back on the track. Adayar is a good yardstick. Obviously, she did well over in America for the Fanshawe team. Snow Lantern, that was a thrilling Falmouth, wasn't it? One of the races of the season. I think she needed every yard of a mile on that occasion. I think 10 furlongs, absolutely big tick in the box, it has to be said around here. Quick ground. I think she's improving. I think she'll improve the step up in trip. Personally, if I was, I'd have a lot closer between them in the market than they are. If anything, I'll probably go joint favourites each of 2, because I just think upward curve, lightly raced 3-year-old should improve step up in trip. Yeah, I'm definitely in the Snow Lantern camp, shall we say.
All right, good push for the filly there. And the other race we'll touch on now, I know there are so many major races throughout the week, but one of the biggest betting races of the year is the Unibet Stewards Cup. This is over 6 furlongs down the straight course. It's always a big field, always run at a frantic speed, and we've got a favourite in First Folio. Currently at 8-1 with Paddy Power for the James Ferguson trained son of Dark Angel. Hurricane Ivor's at 10-1, Bet365. Fresh's price, best price at 12-1, also with Bet365. Boom Shalar at 14-1 for William Hill, and Comanche Falls, another one at 14-1 there with William Hill. But a fascinating contest each and every year, the Stewards Cup, Stephen. It's a race, there's always a fair bit of theatre too about the draw, where you want to be down the straight, undulating course at Glorious Goodwood. Do you have a firm view at this stage?
No firm view at all, Shane, but I think Chill's an interesting runner. Back into a handicap, was behind Starman, a horse we all love. Last time out, when outclassed in a group race. But if you watch that run back, plenty went wrong early there, probably on the wrong part of the track, and eventually faded right out of things. Back into handicaps, still thriving, loves fast ground, balding flying, lots of positives if they go for that race.
Okay, what about you, Ed? Do you have a firm view on the big race?
Now, in Shane Warne style, you've bowled me a proper googly here, because I've not got the absolute foggiest clue of what's going on this, to be honest with you. This is, I'm not going to kid anyone. I think it's a nightmare. No one knows the draw bias, even after the races happen. I'm going to wait till today and make my view up on that one.
All right, let's touch on the Galway Festival, and of course runs throughout the week as well. A mixture of, as Vincent said on last week's program, a mixture of flat racing and also national hunt or jumps racing. Stephen, a lot of highlights throughout the week. We want to be having horses that we know will race really well at the track, and as Vincent also mentioned last week, you don't want to be seeing horses going to the Galway Festival having significant gear changes late in the piece, because it means they're probably too quirky to handle the track. What are you doing? Have you got any bets that you'd like to be placing, the best part of a few days out from the event?
Well, financially, I think it is a bit of a minefield, Shane, to be honest with you. I watched Lorcan and Wire do a report on the ground the other day, and they haven't had any rain for sort of 3 weeks in Galway, which is an absolute first time in the history of the world that's happened. The ground's actually sort of good, or faster side of good, and he's having to put on loads of water at the minute. I mean, it's a punting extravaganza in the old days. They used to get the whole of Ireland turn up, not far from the bar for the whole week, and people staggering around by the end of the day. Probably your ideal day out, Shane, by the sound of it.
The Australian way, Stephen, the Australian way.
I would love to go one, yeah. The one horse I think is interesting is Belfast Banter, of course, won at Cheltenham and Aintree last season, and apparently before those wins, this race was always the target, been trained for the moment to come here and peak off a break. So, and has got winning Galway form in the past, which is a good thing. Won't mind good fast ground. He's likely to be the banker of the week, I'd have thought. But financially, I think it's a brilliant spectacle. Just enjoy it. Every race has got 30 runners in it. The track's a bit of a dog track. They bet to 180%. It's not a punting medium for me, but I'm looking forward to watching it.
What about you, Ed? Have you found one out wide that we could find?
Well, I mean, there is an interesting one in here in the Galway Plate, 16-1, a horse that's been given a lot of harsh names in recent times, but Sam Crow is a 2-time Cheltenham Festival Grade 1 winner. He's going to be in a handicap company here, yes, off top weight, but off a mark of 158. Just really interesting. Obviously, he won in a Grade 3 at Killarney a couple of starts ago, and then ran pretty poorly at the Stowe last time out. But I think, he was, how should we say, he turned up to that with other targets in mind. And I just thought he's interesting. He's been dropped a couple of pounds since then. What is worrying is Vincent's headgear stat, where it sounds like, listening to Sneezy Foster and the O'Learys, they're going to have the tongue tie on, the nose band, the headgear, the balaclava, the lots going on for that race. So that would be a little bit of a worry. But as I said, jokes aside, he's 16-1 in a handicap. This is a little bit of he should find this a little bit easier than some of these Grade 1 contests he's been really struggling in recent times. Yes, he's probably not the force of old, but his handicap mark reflects that because he's tumbled down for the 160s. As I said, proven Grade 1 performer. He's only 9. He's not a 12-year-old who's totally washed up. So double figure price. I'm a sucker for an X-Class Cheltenham winner, and it's 16-1. I haven't backed him yet, but I'm almost talking myself into doing so because this is basically the plan, and it's been the plan for about since the Cheltenham Festival, since he was pulled up at the Cheltenham Festival. So yeah, interesting one, definitely Sam Crow at the 16s.
All right, Sam Crow from you. There's one race going. It's called the Colm Quinn BMW Mile Handicap, which is in the 27th of July. So early on in the Galway week, there's a horse I'm backing at 16-1 in that. Jessica Harrington's Njord, who's got a great record at Galway, and I've actually been given a bit of a push from some of my Irish spies. That could be the way to go. So that'll set me up either in a positive way or a very negative way early on for Galway. But I think most of my
You and your spies, You and your spies. They're everywhere.
Spies everywhere. Got to have spies everywhere. It's the only way you can make it in this game. All right, guys, it's now time for the tips of the week. And great to have Stephen back with us. Of course, he's been in fantastic form with his tips, particularly his best bets on the Betting Expert site this week. They've been landing virtually every day. So, Stephen, putting you under enormous pressure. You've got a strike for us here on Jump to It going into this weekend. Let's have a look at the horses you are most keen on. And you found you found 3, in fact, for us for the week ahead.
Yeah, staying at Ascot, I'm really hoping it doesn't rain, Shane, which is a bit of a risk. I think all these horses want fast ground, really. The first one, Richard Hannon's filly System, had 2 runs. Green as Grass ran really well at Salisbury, then upped dramatically in class and scrambled home at Newmarket. But if you watch that run back, got squeezed out of the stalls, didn't see any daylight till about a furlong and a half out, and then took off. I mean, she only beat Desert Dreamer narrowly, and a lot of people think Desert Dreamer will reverse the form, but I think System's got a load more to come. Will love Ascot, plenty of room, stays the trip really strongly, probably going to want further in time. 3-1, I think, is just about a fair price. I think Desert Dream is pretty exposed, and I think System will improve further after just 2 runs. The 2.25, a trappy handicap, but Fantastic Fox got himself handicapped by winning by a wide margin. They sent him all the way up to Hamilton, and I think that's a clever move to somehow keep the mark down a bit, because they look at Hamilton form and think, well, it can't be a lot. Whereas if you win at Newbury or Newmarket, something like that, probably get an extra £5. So Fantastic Fox, who started off at Ascot, pulled too hard over a mile 2 on soft ground that he didn't particularly like, stopped to nothing, back to a mile, a patient ride on fast ground, 5-1. I think that one will go really well. And we've already done the 3.35. Lone Eagle, 6-1, 13-2. I think is a very fair price. I'm praying they leave Dettori on his own in front and he quickens on the home turn at Ascot and puts the race to bed. I think he's definitely overpriced.
All right, 3 solid selections there, and I do reference this enormously on this program because you have been in fantastic form with us on Jump to It all the way through the year. You're currently 71.5 units ahead, so you've got 3 System, Fantastic Fox, and Lone Eagle for this weekend. Good luck to you. All right, Ed, let's have a look at and recap on your selections from last week. Comprond and Tabdeed missing out, but you're still ahead of the game, 9.5 units up. What are you looking at doing this week?
Yeah, I was tearing my hair out last week when it's Tabdeed beating a neck in the Hatwoods, and then Comprond bundles the last and beating 3/4 a length in the summer hurdle. But there we go, misses as good as a mile, as they say. So yeah, we'll try and get it back. Love, we're steaming in on Love. It would be more points. Just as I said, I'm nervous on that old Met Office watch. There's a band of rain coming in, but whether it hits at 9 a.m. in the morning or at 5 p.m, no one really knows at the moment. It's rattling ground at Ascot at the moment. 29 degrees on the track today. If the ground stays fast, I think the ballpark's definitely swung in her favour. So yeah, I like Love to win, no special price. And then Bill Pato at Newmarket, one that went into Matraca last time out. Interested. The only time this horse has won, it's only run 3 times admittedly, but the only time it won was with Jamie Spencer on board. Jamie Spencer's back on today. upped in trip as well. Mixed messages from pedigree point of view, but from the family of Manjuro. So 10 furlongs shouldn't be a problem, and shape last time out at Chester as if an extra couple of furlongs will suit. Handicap debut, off bottom weight of 83, Spencer back on. Expect your usual Spencer stalking tactics even in a small field, and that one to be delivered late with ground that should suit. And the Dave Simcock team have been amongst the winners recently as well. So yeah, Bill Pato at 340, Love at 335. So that's a pivotal 5 minutes on my Saturday afternoon. I'm supposed to be taking my son to the bouncy castle land that day, and then the Cheltenham Balloon Fiesta. So I just hope the signal's good, because that's going to be a nervous 5 minutes, that is.
Yeah, the pressure of taking your children out when you've got some significant bets going. Good luck to you. I hope it's a very prosperous afternoon for you. But as I mentioned, you've also been in great form for us. 9.5 units ahead with two strong selections, Love and Bill Beto this weekend. Well, let's have a look at my reflections from last weekend. Now, Darab should have won. He was all over a winner and then beaten by Real World, who finished over the top of him like Frankel. So I lost out there, and Kings Lynn was horrible. So I'm pretty much close to sacking Kings Lynn after him being very good for me earlier this year. So I lost 10 units last week, and I'm back down. But I'm very confident this weekend. I'm feeling up and about. Let's have a look at my selections. And I've got a starting point. I'm having two bets in the Princess Margaret Keeneland Stakes at Ascot. I'm backing Nazanin, currently at 10-1 to win. I thought this 2-year-old daughter of Declaration of War was very impressive, winning on debut at Newbury on soft ground. Holly Doyle 6 solid. And the horse that beat on that occasion, Pagadi, should have won during the week, was horribly interfered with and just was narrowly beaten. So I think the form's actually quite strong around Nazanin. And I also like one at a big price, Sassy Rascal, in that race, currently at best price 33-1. It's been slow to begin over shorter trips in its 2 starts to date. Tom Marquand takes the ride, and I think this filly's actually got an enormous amount of ability. So at 33-1, I'm happy to have a unit on it as well. So 2 bets in the Princess Margaret over 6 furlongs at Ascot. The next race that I want to have a look at here, I'm having a bet on Mars a bit. Currently 7-1 each way in the Porsche handicap. I think looks well treated at the weights, right down in the weights too. Holly Doyle takes a ride. So I'm happy to have 2 units each way there at 7-1. Best price with William Hill. And my most confident bet of the weekend is Armory. I know that Stephen and Ed are quite keen on the favoured runner in that race, but I think 15-8 for a horse that's been running consistently well in Group 1s for the past 2 seasons against a horse that is on the up, clearly very good, but I'm happy to side with Armory, who's proven in those tough contests. So I think if Armory can't win that, he's probably going to struggle to win a race for the remainder of the season. All right, that's our tips for the week. Stephen, going into this weekend, as I said earlier, great having you back on Jump to It after a little hiatus. What are you looking most forward to over the next week? Is it the big race on Saturday in the King George VI? Is it Glorious Goodwood? Is it Galway? Or is it something else?
No, it's Lone Eagle in the big race at Ascot, Shane. I'm pretty confident. I think you can pick holes in the front 2. They're about 4-1 on coupled, the front 2. Put them in the book. Lane Mishriff, all in on Lone Eagle. That's the way forward.
Good luck to you. All right, Ed, aside from parent duties on Saturday, what else are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, running around looking for the Wi-Fi hotspots. That's basically my job for the next few days. But yeah, as you say, Ascot's brilliant. Love Glorious Goodwood. That's on the horizon. And obviously, we've got the Galway Festival as well. Will be, I'm not boring old man, but will be interesting that we've pretty much had the absolute heat wave of heat waves here in the UK. That if you look at every weather forecast for next week and pretty much beyond over the next 7 or 8 days, just rain arriving everywhere. So whilst Glorious Goodwood, I believe the track at the moment is pretty much hard, that it could be a different complexion by the time some of these races come around we've discussed. So something just to bear in mind for further down the line. But yeah, Ascot, Goodwood, Galway, it really is picking up now. And really looking forward to it.
Good luck to you as well. There we have it, Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley. We certainly have had plenty to talk about on today's show, but make sure you head to irishracing.com. Vincent and the team do fantastic work each and every week. We've got plenty of information, news, we've got betting insights, we've got form, we've got cards, we've got betting odds, and of course plenty of great tips. Head to irishracing.com and of course bettingexpert.com, where you get Stephen Harris's tips every day for racing in the UK. His form this week in particular has been outstanding. As I touched on earlier, he's got a big profit margin for us here on Jump to It. So head to bettingexpert.com for those best bets and value bets each and every day in the UK. Hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump to It. A lot to look forward to with Group 1 racing this weekend and of course Galway and Glorious Goodwood next week. We'll see you then.